What is going on, nerds? Today I'm discussing my experience in the biggest tournament ever, North American International Championships 2024 in New Orleans. I know this is like a second stream. My previous one I had to cut off because I had something I had to do real quick that I totally forgot about. But thankfully I'm here, and now I can discuss how it worked. And I am ready to discuss it. So, round one, I was plot against Greninja with Frostlass, playing Charizard. So that's a really scary matchup, considering Charmeleon has ability, Charizard has ability, Lumineon does, Manaphy does. Manaphy having that is tough because they can snipe after my Manaphy gets knocked out by the Frostlass. Rotom, Pidgeot, and the whole deck is based on abilities. So it really hurts to have so many abilities in my deck and be fighting Greninja Frostlass. Game 1 was pretty close. I managed to knock out Frostlass early and stuff and barely lost. But sadly, the Frostlass knocked me out at the last second. Just barely enough damage to do it. So I did lose that one. Game 2, I got demolished. But my spirit was not crushed. I knew I could still do well in this regional. So I continued playing. And, Game 2 was the Charizard mirror, which was surprising to fight that as well, because it wasn't even on the graphic. Greninja and Charizard were both not on the graphic of the top 6 decks in popularity. Meaning it must have been less than 5% of players playing Charizard and less than 5% playing Greninja. I happened to fight them round 1 and 2. I guess it is more likely to fight weird decks in early rounds, especially if you're doing poorly. But in the mirror, the tough thing is my opponent has Bibarel, and I do not have Bibarel. And that is absolutely terrifying. Not having Bibarel makes the matchup so much worse because they can just Roxanne you, which I don't even play Roxanne, or Unfair Stamp you because my opponent happen to have Unfair Stamp as their ace spec. And that can just lose you the game if you don't get lucky off of Unfair Stamp or Roxanne. Game 1, they got down on Bidoof, and I immediately bossed it. So thankfully, I got rid of the Bibarel before they could use it. And then I ended up winning, because Maximum Belt was my ace spec, where Unfair Stamp was theirs, just so I could knock them out so early in the game. After taking 2 prizes, I just gussed their Pidgeot and knocked it out for 2 prizes, and removed their draw engine, which really slowed them down. Game 2, I ended up losing, despite them not getting down Bibarel, but it was still pretty close. And Game 3 was very close, but at one point they Roxanne me, and I top deck boss orders for game, despite not having Pidgeot anymore. Which was insanely lucky. They had been forced to put down Lumineon, when they really didn't want to have to put down Lumineon. But because they put down Lumineon, it ended up helping a lot, just because they had to do it to Roxanne. Next game, I fight against Gardevoir, which is actually a good matchup because of Lost Vacuum. However, they did play Mimikyu, which ends up blocking me and making the matchup much tougher than it normally would be, because I have to have a Gust every turn, and if I can't get Pidgeot quickly, I might not have that Gust. Thankfully, they weren't playing quite right. They kept evolving to Gardevoir EX. Gust or Gardevoir EX. Then they bring back up Mimikyu. Gust something, knock out Mimikyu. But during that turn, they'd also evolve to Gardevoir EX again. So I knocked out Gardevoir EX multiple times, because they kept evolving up to it for some reason. Instead of just staying in Curlias and having Mimikyu block, and if I gust them, I take 1 prize, and they gust in return, take 1 prize, and it's even. So it's just very odd. Then the next game, they go ahead and they Evo TM to a Gardevoir EX, which was very confusing. Instead of just leaving it as Curlia for draw engine. So I'm like, okay, I gust it, and then they just forfeit. They didn't even want to finish the game, which was very surprising. Then I fight my first of 4 Lugias, which is honestly a really bad matchup. Temple of Sinnoh shutting down Legacy Energy is huge for sure, because it can really slow them down, and also shuts off Gift at the same time. So my strategy is when they attack with hands, or something else with Legacy Energy, I Iono them to a low hand, then I knock them out, they don't give up 1 less prize for Legacies off, and they don't draw cards with Gift, therefore their hand stays tiny. The tough thing is, Lugia V-Star has the effect where it discards a Stadium from play. So if I ever put out Sinnoh, they can just attack with the V-Star and get rid of the Stadium. Thankfully, I managed to 2-0 this one, just because game 1 I got quite set up, and they didn't get quite as set up. And game 2, they really didn't get set up, and I managed to knock out their only Lugia V, leading them to scoop the game immediately and just give it to me. After that, I fought yet another Lugia, and this one demolished me, just 2-0'd me. It was not even close, which was tough. But there are still two Lugias to come. Then, after that, I played against... Actually, I think it was another Lugia. I'm trying to remember the order of my games. I'm pretty sure it's another Lugia. And this one, I somehow managed to win. I 2-0'd it, despite it being a really bad matchup. Then I fought Future Hands. But the thing about Future Hands, it used to be a really good matchup, and Max Battle, of course, makes it even better. But recently they added Iron Thorns, which shuts off both my Pidgeot and my Charizard EX, and my Lumineon, and my Rotom. So all my attackers and stuff just don't have abilities anymore if they bring it into the active early, which can be a really big problem because I need my abilities. He did get a really early Thorns. Thankfully, I got lucky enough to find Boss almost immediately. Actually, I think I found Counter Catcher is what it was because he took its knockout. So I Counter Catcher, and now that Thorn's on the bench, its ability doesn't work. It only works while it's active. So then I take a knockout on his mostly powered up Iron Hands, along with Lost Vacuuming his Heavy Baton, and he just immediately ran out of energy almost completely, which allowed me to win the game. Game 2, I start with Cleffa on the active, Charmander on the bench. I'm going first, so I can't use Cleffa to draw cards. Turn 2, he somehow powers up Iron Hands with 3 energy for Arm Press. Ian manages to Prime Catcher my only Charmander and just knock out my only Charmander, which really, really hurts. This worries me because if I lose this game, I can't make day 2 anymore. Then he tells me that actually he could have taken an extra prize on my Charmander if he had used Ampy very much, but he messed up the generator. He used Prime Catcher before generator, therefore not having enough energy to use a second attack and take an extra prize, which actually ends up mattering. So then I bring up Cleffa, and I top deck Nest Ball, so I can get another Charmander down. Thank goodness. And then I draw some cards. He knocks me out for 2 prizes with Ampy very much. He's taken 3 prizes at this point, and I've done nothing. But I somehow top deck, or off the Cleffa, I actually drew an Iono. So I Iono, and I draw into a Rare Candy Charizard EX and a Poffin to give myself Pidgey. I just get everything I need to completely set up my board. And then I knock him out and take 2 prizes. And he did not have Heavy Baton down because he'd been going so quickly. And therefore, now he barely had any energy on the board. He has 1 attacker left, so he brings it up, hits me, doesn't knock me out. I hit him, knock him out in turn. And at some point, he ends up taking 1 more prize, but I end up taking my last 2 prizes before he can do much. At the very end of the game, he just has 2 prizes. He needs a Gust, and he needs a whole bunch of energy because Iron Hands runs out of energy way too fast, and he used all his generators turn 1 pretty much. 3 out of 4. And had a really thick deck. So I won Future Hands, and then I was on my winning it. I was 5-2. If I win 1 more game, I can intentional draw, which means agree to my opponent to a tie, to go 6-2-1, which 6-2-1 makes day 2. But I fight my 4th Lugia, which is a really bad matchup. Game 1, I actually mess up. So I don't expect him to get turn 2 double Archeops in the discard, plus Lugia V-Star, plus Wellspring Mask and Ogerpon to knock out both my Charmanders. So naturally, I don't put down Manaphy. But it turns out that he managed to get all of that and knock out both my Charmanders, and I pretty much lost the game. So I do end up losing, but I go to game 2 and barely manage to squeeze it out. Sadly, by the time I get to game 3, I can't quite get it. There was an option to try to stall his Iron Hands that had, and hope he had enough energy prize, but he only had 1 prize at that point, and it was just unlikely that that would work. So I did try, but nope, such a close game. What was interesting is in game 3, I used Temple of Sinnoh when I didn't even have a setup. It took me forever to get set up, but it was literally just to force him to treat his Iron Hands, because his Iron Hands had 4 energy on it, and he couldn't do much with it, with the Sinnoh in play, unless he found a Stadium, which he didn't, so he had to retreat off 4 energy. Sadly, he had Roseanne's backup to get back to the Legacy, so he could use its effect of preventing prize cards later on, which really, really, made it easier on him. It definitely was scary. So I continue playing, and no, I've lost. I can't make day 2. But I can still get 6-3 and get 60 points, which is insane that not even making day 2, you can get 60 points at International. And really get closer to my World's Invite, even if I won't fully get there. And I fight a Snorlax Stall. What's interesting, this opponent, because he also knows he can't make day 2, he doesn't really want to mess with me with Snorlax Stall. He just gives me the win. I probably had an alright chance fighting it, because I do play both Turo, Kieran, and Palpad. And 2 boss, but it still was very surprising that my opponent just gave me the win. So I was 6-3, which happens to be the same record as Azul Garcia Griego, one of the top players around. I was 334th with 6-3, and he was 300th. It was also the same record as Piper Lapine, if I'm not mistaken. Where is she? She's also a very good player. And Reagan Redsloff was the same record. There are a lot of players with the same record as me. Bodie Robinson, another really good player who just came up from seniors. Nathan Ginsburg, like, so many people went 6-3, so it was actually the best I've ever done in a regional. Owen Cattleman as well. It's surprising how many people end up having the same record as me. And I do feel like I did pretty well at the tournament, even if it was definitely imperfect. And I probably did mess up against Lugia, but I still did pretty well. But if you look at the meta, I did not fight what I wanted to fight. If I had come in day 2, I would have been seeing a lot of Gardevoir, and that is a really good matchup. If you look at the top 8, there's 6 Gardevoir and 2 Lost Box, which is absolutely crazy. It makes no sense that there would be that many Gardevoir and Lost Box. It just surprises me immensely. And then 9th is Gardevoir 2. Like, it's crazy, actually. It really surprised me. But, Lost Box did end up winning, which is actually a kind of scary matchup. Especially this one, because it plays Iron Thorns, which you do not expect in a Lost Box. But it can really slow down my deck. It's requiring to find a Gust if they get it up early. And it plays Hands to take extra prizes. It's just kind of a scary matchup overall. It is winnable, but I do not play Jirachi. Thankfully, all my Charmanders are 70 HP, and my Pidgeys are 60 HP, making my Lost Box matchup easier than it otherwise would be. This list is completely turbo. 3 Lost Vacuum, a Pokegear. It's got 4 Pokestop, way more than you see most. I mean, there's not that much text in here. It's just consistency. The only interesting texts are like Thorns. And I guess you could count Roxanne as a tech, but most play Roxanne. So, really, really interesting list. And the one at 8th does not, also plays the Hands and Thorns, which is really interesting. And this one also got 54th and 105th. So there's other people playing the Hands and Thorns. I was never expecting to see Thorns in Lost Box, but apparently it's the way to go. Next, Gardevoir. Yeah. Got the Monkey Dory. Monkey Dory makes Gardevoir insane. Just to get the move damage if it has a Dark Energy. However, Lost Vacuum on my Charizard makes it nice. Speaking of my Charizard list, let's talk about that a little bit. So, I got maxed out of the Ace deck. I had Mist Energy, but I didn't fight any Dragapult, so it never actually came up. Vacuum for Gardevoir. Sinnoh for Lugia. It was a very teched out build. Kieran for Lugia and other stuff just to do 30 more. But it still ended up not quite making day 2. And then there were a bunch more Gardevoir, and they were all pretty similar lists, to be honest. Someone's got Tatsugiri to get cards. Some people are playing Klefki, some weren't. A lot of people had the Fluttermane. It was really a mix of whatever disruption option you want. Do you want the Klefki? Do you want the Fluttermane? Do you want the Mimikyu? Some played Mimikyu. Some didn't. This one does not have the Klefki. It was just a very different list. And one of them was, which one was it? There was one that was really weird. This was it, I think. It plays Luxurious Cape, but no Bravery Charm and no Drifloon, which is absolutely insane. It also plays 1 Irida, which you would not expect, and an Enhanced Hammer, and a Devolution TM, double Artisan. You got the Mimikyu. 3 Darkness Energy and double Monkey Dory. Like, this is a really unique list, and it ended up doing pretty well, but it's definitely different from all the rest of the lists you're seeing here. Most of the others are more expected. They got the Bravery Charms and stuff. This one, Not as focused on big hits, more focused on disruption and stuff. And more Gardevoirs, but there was a Raging Bolt Ogerpon that did pretty well. It had a good meta percentage in day 2, but it ended up not doing super well in day 2. A lot of people playing the Sandy Shocks instead of the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, which is an interesting inclusion. Regidrago made top 16, which I don't think anybody was expecting. Teal Mask Ogerpon getting energy in play is huge when you can also use Raging Bolt. And Dragapult is actually really good in Regidrago, along with Gudra and Noivern to block things. Surprisingly good deck because of the fact that Energy Switch can power up into Regidrago using the energy you attach with the Ogerpon. It's very interesting for sure, and ended up doing pretty well. There was a Qian Pao at 17th, which I did not think Qian Pao would do very well at all, but it almost made top 16. Nicholas Moffat playing it. Tord played a Zard Dragapult with only one Dragapult. It was mostly a Zard deck. But Tord just makes crazy decks, and he decided that this was the one to play. Which absolutely baffles me that he came up with such a crazy deck. And yeah, Ian Robb played Miraidon with thorns and hands, and this just has a whole bunch of stuff. It was a really interesting tournament overall, and really big as well. And I enjoyed being there. Anyway, I'll see you guys.